It's been a while since Twitter has given me content to talk about. I've been doing like mostly reaction content, but instead we have two things to look at here, which are great. They're both fighting game related, which is I guess what I used to talk about a lot. I used to talk about a lot of like fighting game concepts, discourse in the fighting game community, and this is the one that gets me first. 2 minutes of Maximilian Dood. Maximilian, I'm gonna pause it. Maximilian Dood is a very well known figure in the fighting game community for good reasons, right? He's played a lot of fighting games, plays them all at a decent enough level that like casuals can relate to him, but also so can competitive players. He's worked in the industry, worked on some fighting games, and of course is deep in the scene of the fighting game community when it comes to volunteering and working with /for tournaments, whether that be TOing, bracket running, or commentary. Very, very knowledgeable person. And he has a couple words to say about fighting games that I want to like listen to. This is from one of his recent YouTube videos. It's just a 2-minute clip out of his YouTube. I think the YouTube video is like 13 or 14 minutes. But this is a 2-minute clip talking about Tekken, because the name of the YouTube video is like the real problem with Tekken 8. And I don't think particularly this is the problem with Tekken 8. I think it's more a problem with a lot of fighting games, but we'll let him speak first. At least we'll let him speak until I have to pause.
In Tekken, you'll run into somebody where it's like, oh, they're essentially executing the flowchart and you break it, or you get close to breaking it, right? You get really close to breaking it. The frustrating ass part of Tekken is that you essentially see through their bullshit and you wonder, will they do anything to respond to it? And most of the time they won't, but sometimes you get close to breaking it and it's like, oh, I see what you're doing, but it took 3 rounds, right? It took the first game to figure it out. And then what happens when you lose that first game? They quit. You got close to figuring out my bullshit. I don't have any answers beyond that. I'm out.
That could be true. Or they could have not had fun playing against you. So they don't want to keep playing. Right? Maybe they think, oh, this guy's way weaker than me, so I don't know that he figured me out. So I don't want to stay and play against this guy who sucks, who I think sucks, right? It could be relative. They could be way better than you think they are, but because they didn't figure out your flowchart fast enough in your head, you just think they're terrible. So you don't want to continue playing versus them because you're like, I don't want to pub stomp. That's shitty. Let me get out of here. Or you don't want to play them because they weren't fun to play against, right? Those are like the two main factors to why I think someone could be leaving, other than, ooh, they're about to figure me out. Because of course some people do leave because they know that their answers, someone's about to have an answer to the way they play and they don't want to deal with the repercussions of their, oh no, the consequences of my actions.
And that shit, like, legit, that's like the whole point of a fighting game, bro. It's like a full in Tekken.
Well, hold on.
And that shit, like, legit, that's like the whole point of a fighting.
Is it? There's Timmy's, there's Johnny's, and there's Spike's. For a Timmy, the point of a fighting game is not, the point of any competitive game is not to adapt back and forth with your opponent. It's to do your cool, funny thing and get the fuck out of there. You did your cool, funny thing. You killed your opponent from full life in, like, with a crazy touch of death wall combo because it was what you were trying to set up for. You got the setup. You're like, fuck yeah, I got my setup. I'm a Timmy. I'm out of here. A Spike, yeah, maybe that is true. Actually, a Spike wants to completely dominate their opponent and make it so that there is no chance of them ever succeeding in the matchup. That's what a Spike wants to do. For a Johnny, maybe, you're right. Maybe the point is a meaningful back and forth and adapting with your opponent, against your opponent. That's not the point of enjoyment for everyone who's playing a fighting game or any competitive game in general. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't see people playing lockout cards in games like Pokemon, in games like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering. We wouldn't see Blood Moons, right? We wouldn't see Snorlax decks. We wouldn't see the stadium that locks people out. I can't remember what it is. We wouldn't see things like Floodgates and Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Skill Drain, Vanity's Emptiness, Royal Oppression. Some of these are fucking banned, by the way, because people use the shit out of them. Because a Spike doesn't give a shit about your enjoyment or his enjoyment. He wants to win at all costs. And a Timmy wants to do the cool thing that works, and his flowchart maybe is what it is, and then not play. He's like, I did my cool thing. We're fucking out of here, boys. Let's go.
Game, bro. It's like a full admittance from the other player. Hey, I got this list of bullshit I do. It works pretty good. I execute said flowchart 2.0. If it doesn't work, I have no interest in changing that flowchart. I have no interest in adapting or doing anything different. It's too risky to fight you again because you might beat me. I'm out. That shit cuts me mad deep. The most fun shit in fighting games is getting close matches with people.
To a Johnny. Probably not to a Timmy, because then he's got to think harder about executing his cool plan or his cool funny thing that he wants to do, right? I personally do enjoy close matches. They're stressful, but I like that they're stressful. I don't want to just stomp on people either. Yeah, right. If I'm playing against a friend or someone who wants to keep going and they're significantly worse than me, I'm not going to be like, nope, we got to get out of here. Sorry, dude. But some people do. Some people don't like that feeling of beating up people who are way worse than them. They want to get the fuck out of low ranks if they're better. Some people do want to pup stomp and do want to shit on worse players because it makes them feel good about themselves for some reason. I'm not sure, but that's the way they choose to enjoy the game. And if people are still playing against them that are worse, then that's okay, because now they're getting their ass beat by someone better and they're enjoying the game that way. It goes twofold. It goes both ways. The way people enjoy video games and fighting games is not always the same. So these blanket statements coming from someone who's mostly Johnny-like feel as if they don't account for spikes and Timmys. This is the old Magic the Gathering things, Johnny's, Timmys, and spikes, is something Garfield talked about. But spikes are extremely competitive. Timmys want to do their funny thing, and Johnny's are somewhere in the middle. Okay, basically, easiest way to think about it. And if you're a spike, you don't want close matches. Probably, you really want all blowouts. Like, let's be completely honest. If you could win Evo by playing against the worst players in the world, but you won Evo, if you're some no name, you don't care. If you're one of the best players in the world and your bracket is extremely easy, right? You're playing against really good players, but you have amazing matchups across the entire board. Like, you're playing Guile and you get like 12 juries in a tournament with like 14 matches for you because you're winner's side. You're happy about it. You're not like, oh man, I got a bunch of juries. I didn't even have to try hard to win this tournament. That sucks. No, you're not. Don't lie. You're like, dude, I got an easy run. It was great. You know, today was just my day. That's awesome. I love that for me.
It is the most fun shit. I hate stomping noobs, dude. I hate it.
I agree.
I want to get out of the lower ranks when I'm playing Tekken so bad because I find it actually less fun. And stomping noobs doesn't give me any satisfaction. I know that's not the case for a lot of people,
yeah,
but
he admits it. Okay.
High quality good games where it's like, damn, this bitch just 3-0'd me. All right. And then what happens in the next set against like really good players? You'll see this happen to me a lot because I don't have a lot of Tekken experience, but I'll see what they're doing, and what happens? You 3-0 them back. And it's like, oh, so what happens now? Usually against these players that are actually have a lot of Tekken 7 experience, I get fucked up. And in the final set, it's like, yeah, they adapt back and fuck me up. And I'm like, cool, that's satisfying. I'm cool with losing in that way. That's completely fine to me.
But not everyone is.
They 3-0 me, I 3-0 them, they 3-0 me back. I'm like, that's fucking Tekken, bro.
That's all of fighting games. That's not just Tekken. Right? And I want to preface this. There's a quote tweet that I want to look at with this as a piece. And the quote tweet basically is talking about one of the ways to fix matchmaking in Tekken. Yeah, here it is. Tekken 8's biggest problem. This is the full video if anyone wants to take a look. It's on Maximilian Dude's channel. Maximilian Dude is a huge content creator for fighting games, and I personally like most of his opinions. I think most of the time his opinions are close enough to like the median of fighting game players, the vast majority, because there's some Timmys and there's some Spikes, but it's mostly Johnnies. How fighting games are. But to like say that this feeling only occurs in Tekken is insane, because DOA works the same way. Soul Calibur works the same way. Even Virtua Fighter to a degree can work the same way. Street Fighter, you can also win off bullshit flowcharts, but you only have 2 rounds to figure. You have to be even faster, right? And if you lose that first game, guess what? They can still do that to you in something like Tekken. I mean, in something like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. Oh, maybe not Mortal Kombat. How do I go to quote tweets? In something like Street Fighter, DOA, Virtua Fighter, Soul Calibur, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, everything. But Mr. Mike Hollow, also a very prominent, oh, I'm not following Mike. Wow. A pretty prominent, or getting there, fighting game content creator who talks a lot about the negatives of the scene and things we need to address, which I love because so many people just want to glaze the scene and talk about how great it is. But we as a community have to also talk about the negatives of our community. And Mike likes to mention those negatives a lot. People give him slack for it. People give him hate for it, but slack for it and hate for it. But I think that you're doing the right thing by talking about the things that you dislike about the gaming medium you enjoy. Now, to preface that, he says, Harada needs to see this because why in God's name would you allow someone to one and done? Max explains it perfectly. Now, the problem with Yeah, see, so I say it here. I usually respect your opinions, Mike, but every single fighting game you can get one and done and get robbed of the experience of adapting. This isn't a second problem, it's an overall fighting game ranked problem, and the solution is to only award points on full set wins. Hold on. Someone says, apparently MK doesn't operate this way, so things have changed. It's not a fighting game ranked problem. It is. I said fighting games, literally every other fighting game other than MK does what Tekken does. Getting held hostage for your point has its pros and cons, but it's industry standard not to do that to people. Do you know why? Because there's a lot of potential reasons why you could be leaving. Right? We could assume the best. We could assume the worst and say everyone that's leaving is one and doneers because they know they robbed you and they're trying to get out of there. We could assume the worst of every single person that exists. Or we could factor in a lot of the things that make it so that awarding points on full set wins or giving away the points if someone chooses to leave is the worst thing in the world when it comes to fighting games. Because there are so many outside factors in peer-to-peer fighting games, in peer-to-peer games with lots of knowledge checks and let's say latency. Let's be honest. Our connections aren't always the best as it comes to the internet, right? You can have a great match with someone and everything is going swimmingly and you feel no lag, no hiccups, no issues. And you play that guy 2 weeks later and his connection is shit and you're both still wired. And for some reason, his internet was just bad that day. You finished the set the first time. You don't want to finish the set today. Dude, I can't see what's going on. We're at 270 MS. This is unfortunate. This is not the way that the game is supposed to be played and enjoyed. And it's making it so that one of our experiences, if not both of our experiences, are hampered by this connection. What do you do now? Do you leave and give the guy his points? Even though you could probably beat him if it was a standard connection? No, you just leave. You one and done. You just one and done. But in this instance where you want to make people, you want to hold people hostage for full set wins, if the connection is terrible, you are losing points to people with bad connection. Now, if we're assuming the worst of people, that means we know everyone who really gives a shit about points is going to play with lag switches or use Wi-Fi repeaters with an Ethernet cable plugged in so that they're actually on Wi-Fi, but have the game register them as wired because there's a wire going to the computer and it just registers through to the code that they have an Ethernet cable plugged in, even though technically they're using a Wi-Fi repeater with said connection, right? So if we're assuming the worst of people, that is one way people will steal even more points from you because of that. People are really laggy, okay? People are actually using unfortunate cheats to frame drop people and hold them hostage in matches as it is already. Someone did it to A.O. Richie. Like they made the game drop to like 1 FPS every like 3 or 4 seconds, which is fucked up, right? And that's a cheating problem, but it's a problem that isn't currently being addressed. So holding people hostage when that problem hasn't been addressed, which is something Mike mentions, he says that cheating needs to be addressed as well. But if it's not addressed properly, that guy still stole your points. You can report that guy, but your points are still gone beforehand. Right? Now I've reported him. He can't do that to anyone else, hopefully. But I still lost my points. And I had to lose all of the points instead of one game's worth of points. Or I had to play through this entire slog and hope to beat him for this reason. Right? And that's just like in-game factor. That is not saying that you started up a ranked set, but now you have a family emergency and you have something you need to go get done. And whether you won or lost, you got to get out of there. You got to go. You know, your dog, you got to take your dog to the vet. Dog or cat made a big mess. Your kids are messing with something they should not be, so you need to go get to them and be attentive and be a parent, an aunt, an uncle, whatever. Right? Outside factors, you just leave. And when you leave, sure, you're going to get penalized. Maybe you get a rage quit penalty, or you just get a penalty for leaving the match. But that penalty for leaving the match is that, yeah, okay, he already beat me once, I'm going to leave. Or, oh, I beat him once, maybe he's going to think I'm a piece of shit, but I got to go. I got stuff I got to do. Right? And that's not even to mention that those two and three things can also all mesh and work together. Holding people hostage for their points is the worst thing you can do in a fighting game because it just makes it so that the vast majority of casual players, which is what keeps games alive, competitive players don't. I don't know if you guys know that. The back of the FGC is run off of casual players. Casual players go to tournaments. Casual players play in online ranked, in quick match queue. They sometimes even go to their locals. Casual players aren't there to be the best or to play in a setting where they're just trying to have fun, right? And to tell a casual player, hey, you queued up for ranked, this guy's going to beat your ass 2 times really fast because you don't know how to adapt to it, but you have to just sit there and take it. You queued up for ranked, little bro. Sorry, die, right? Like, you're not really hampering someone's enjoyment by one and dunning. Maybe you are, maybe it's annoying, but I think you should think about it as one of the evils of fighting games. But if you're good enough, you get one and done a lot and you still make it to your rank. I think being worried about one and dones in something like Tekken, Soul Calibur, and attest to this, Mortal Kombat, maybe not Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. If you're getting one and done a lot, but you're good enough, you're eventually going to break through and still make it to the rank that you belong at. But what happens if you don't? What happens if you don't make it to your rank? That means you didn't belong there in the first place. Right? That means that was a skill issue. Regardless of getting one and done constantly, you still have the opportunity to go into the lab and figure out what you could have done so that the next time those situations come up, you have the knowledge for it. A good player will always be a good player, and a flowchart one trick will always be a flowchart one trick. You'll always be able to adapt to those players given enough time. So running into the situation again, there's only so many characters on the roster. You will eventually beat these players. Is there any other things that I need to mention about potentially one and dunning being like something you just have to get over, right? Let me see if there's anything here. I believe someone else said something. Yeah, see, if I'm fighting a cheater who's purposely lags their PC when the other person is doing combos, I don't want to be forced to rematch. That's an exception and another problem that Bandai Namco needs to address. You still lost your points before that happened. And some people even said in this thread, like, oh, well, what if you play someone and their connection is shit, so you're stuck? And he's like, why did you accept Wi-Fi? Someone else says it, not Mike. Mike's not that dense. So why did you accept Wi-Fi? And he said, no, it was wired, but it was still a bad connection. I just call all bad connections, right? So you can have a perfectly serviceable Wi-Fi or wired match sometimes, and then other times you're sitting, instead of sitting at 70 ping, you're sitting at 280. Right? Are you going to sit there and play through a 280 MS game? No, you shouldn't be forced to. That's silly. And you could say, oh, we'll only let people play ranked if they have a wired connection. That's just one more hurdle to get through before you can play ranked. That's going to create less people in ranked, and that's going to basically make the population seem significantly smaller for the game. Also, some people's connections are wired and are worse than people on strong Wi-Fi. If you have a gigabit connection, your gigabit connection is going to be better than some shitty, 100 up, 2 down, 3 down connection that's wired. Gigabit is going to be way buffer than that. There's nothing you can do about that. If you have bad internet but you're wired, you're going to get more matches necessarily because, oh yeah, like we are adding this restriction to who we accept in the game, and your connection can still be bad. When you click accept, it could be a green 4-bar or a blue 5-bar. You're like, hell yeah. And then when you get into the match, in a little bit, it drops down to a 3-bar or a 2-bar. It's happened to me. And guess what I do versus those people if I'm not having fun? If I'd rather spend my time doing something else, or if I really just genuinely cannot play through this connection, I leave. It doesn't matter if they beat me. It doesn't matter if I beat them. I leave. And I think that that's an entirely natural and normal thing to do. It is psychotic to think that you should lock people into ranked sets because there's so many negatives that come along with that, and I named a lot of them. There's probably even more that I'm not thinking of that could be left in the comment section of this video. This is a YouTube video after all. You guys sat through the whole thing, right? Right? And if you did, you should like the video and subscribe to the channel, where I try to talk about fighting game discourse and news every now and then, but a lot of times I get lazy. I'm going to be quite honest. I've been doing way more reaction content than eloquently spoken discourse conversation. I also think that a lot of discourse is pretty shitty, but I think this one is important because I don't think it should become an industry standard for us to hard lock people into sets for their points. I think it's pretty bad. How do you feel about it? Do you think I'm off my rocker? Do you agree with Mike? Do you agree with the vast majority of people who want more people to play in full sets to be able to gain their points? Or do you think that we should leave the systems as it is and let the players who are thriving in those systems continue to thrive? Leave it all in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the channel. This has been Beanie Thuggish for the YouTubes, talking about the fighting game ranked problem and what to do to solve it if it needs to be solved at all. Signing out and saying